see how Zanardi's just gradually caught up over the last few laps. Meanwhile, Patrick Carpentier has made a pit stop, and he comes in from 4th place. There he is, the Bettenhausen crew going to work on a track where Stefan Johansson has had some reasonable results in the past. Look at that, again, the rear wheel spinning.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether it's a clutch problem there or just getting into gear a little bit too soon there, but there goes Patrick Carpentier. Good stop by the Bettenhausen team. He does, however, lose a lap at this stage as the leaders flash past the pits behind him, but he will, as long as he's in the yellow in the next couple of laps, he will gain that back when the rest of them cycle in for their own pit stops. Within a couple of laps here we are on board with Bobby Rahal, a lap or two and he'll be in the pits as well. We can look down below our vantage point here and see Mark Blundell's crew getting ready for a stop. Meanwhile, on board still with Bobby Rahal, you can hear the revs dropping. He's coming into the pits this time around.
Yeah, Bobby Rahal, the race leader. Now then, what we've got to look for are any repetition of these gearbox problems from these guys. Coming into the pits, he changes down through the gears. It seems to be working well. It's on the speed limiter as he comes into the pit lane. We're watching Mark Blundell stop. From our vantage point, Mark gets out safely, I can tell you. No gearbox problems for him at the moment. Bobby Rahal grabs the fluid, and those guys must be sweating pretty badly out there. Crew chief just giving him the instructions. Great stop again, fabulous from Bobby Rahal. 12.5 seconds, and the team working really well. Still, you can hear the little bit of advice from the crew chief as he comes back out onto the circuit, and even an experienced man like Bobby Rahal still needs those words from the crew to tell him, just keep him reminded on what he's got to do coming into and going back out of the pits. On board now with Scott Pruitt. Let's watch this pit stop. In behind him, Raoul Boesel. So Pruitt in from 2nd, Boesel in from 3rd place. A lot of wing change going on the front of that car.
More grip into the, bit more bite into the front of that car. Perhaps just a little bit loose, understeering a little bit too much, and a bit more bite into the front. And there goes the car. Here comes now the race leader, Alex Zanardi. Oh, gee, just had to go past the outside of Raoul Boesel, who had to slam on the brakes. I think might have killed the engine there for Raoul Boesel.
Yeah, it looks as though Boesel in the background has suffered a stalled engine. Zanardi, this is a good stop from the Ganassi crew. Get it out cleanly, a little bit slow perhaps, just getting it out of the pits, but he does get it out. Now I'm looking to see where Bobby Rahal is on circuit. He's coming through the curve of the D. There is Bobby Rahal, and he is up to full speed, of course, as Zanardi now on the lane on the inside tries to accelerate, builds up to speed, and you'll see on the back straight as Bobby Rahal tries to catch up to Zanardi. Zanardi just rejoining the main part of the track, but is he going to be able to stay ahead of Bobby Rahal? Rahal with the momentum. There is Rahal. Zanardi's ahead of him on the track, but Rahal is up to top speed, and Zanardi will still take another lap or so to be up to full speed himself.
Yeah, there comes the race leader now with Gilles de Ferran right behind him, and Zanardi ducks to the inside down to turn 1, goes past Gilles de Ferran there, no problems at all. Oh, poor Raoul Boesel still having problems there.
Yeah, it's dreadful for Raoul Boesel, who's been running up front all afternoon so far, but they've got terrible difficulties, and perhaps it's another repetition of the gearbox troubles we've seen. Zanardi leads. That's a great start from the Ganassi crew. They've managed to get the Italian ahead of Rahal, and Carpentier is in 3rd, and Blundell now in 5th. Back with the live coverage from Eurosport SR. Race leader Bobby Rahal has hit the wall very, very heavily. Well, he's in 2nd place at the time. Zanardi, in fact, the race leader. Bobby Rahal, somebody, I think, we don't quite know what happened, if he was squeezed out or not. We haven't seen a replay. This is happening right now. Bobby Rahal out of the race in dramatic fashion. Very similar damage to the car as to Parker Johnston's, but what a shame for Rahal, who's been up front and who was catching Zanardi before that happened. Yeah, he closed up onto the tail of Zanardi. There was a group of slower cars there. Rahal was about 50 yards ahead of them. I think Dennis Vitolo's car, who was 2 or 3 laps down there, he was in the middle of that little group as well as they were coming up to lap him. I'm not quite sure what happened. Hopefully we'll get a replay pretty shortly, but Bobby Rahal is certainly out of that car, and that's a great, more disappointment for Bobby Rahal. He had a fabulous run in Rio, of course, ran out of fuel there on the last lap. 86 races he's gone without a victory, and that's not indicative of Bobby Rahal's competitiveness at all. He was very, very, very strong this afternoon, and then it's heartbreak for Team Rahal. There is Jimmy Prescott, the
crew chief there. We can see at the left of the screen, there goes Alex Zanardi below Dennis Vitolo, and Bobby Rahal tries to go around the outside of him. Vitolo, well, I don't think you can't blame Dennis Vitolo for that one. Bobby Rahal tried to go around the outside of him, and well,
just got wide, didn't he? Got up into the grey stuff. Just look at it's like it is an explosion, isn't it, when he hits the wall? Just look at this. And those guys down there behind the wall there, that car really going so quickly. Let's watch it from the onboard now. This should be pretty frightening stuff.
Yeah, no kidding. There is Dennis Vitolo's guy down in the middle of the racetrack. He doesn't really alter his line too much, but Bobby Rahal just strayed just a fraction up off line there, and frustration for Bobby Rahal. The closing speed was so great. Dennis Vitolo was in the middle of the racetrack, and Zanardi had gone round the underneath the slower car. Bobby Rahal did not have the opportunity to do that. He was committed to the outside line, and boy, that's such a disappointment for Bobby Rahal.
You could hear him actually on the onboard camera. You could hear how early he was off the power. He was off the power before this point, and yet there was nothing he could do at this point. You just were sitting there. It happens pretty quickly at 230 miles an hour, but those bits of carbon fiber, bits and pieces going absolutely everywhere. The guy's ducking down behind the wall, but it just shows you once again the incredible safety of these machines to hit the wall at that sort of speed and in such a dramatic fashion. And for Bobby to be able to just step out of the car, very impressive. But this was it. He was up wide. The car was just running wider and wider and wider until contact and obliterating the picture from the onboard camera. But thankfully, Bobby Rahal steps clear of the car, and the Miller Lite team start to pack up the equipment for the weekend. So great disappointment. But of course, a man who has suffered a very similar incident earlier on in the race was Parker Johnson. Let's hear from him.
Just happened out on the racetrack with Bobby Rahal as we look at a giant bruise up on your left part of the upper forehead. Now, what caused that?
Well, first of all, I've got to thank CART and PPG and their rules committee, and especially the people at Reynard, because we had a failure at 230 plus miles an hour, and I went pretty, not headlong, but a really good shot into the wall, and I was able to walk away. This was from the right front suspension penetrating my helmet, and I think if it weren't for the Bell helmet that I wore, I wouldn't be standing here talking to you right now.
Parker, let me ask you a question. We're seeing a lot of gearboxes, especially on the Renards, beginning to fail. Can you isolate as to maybe what's causing that?
Well, we had a failure actually earlier in the week, and we've got a gearbox specialist who's one of the best, and from what I understand, it's been going through the Renard teams. We seem to get it solved, and then a long period of time goes by, and all of a sudden it fails again. So they don't know what the problem is specifically, but it's like the wheel bearing failures that we've had in the past. I know the guys at Renard and all the gearbox technicians in the paddock area are hard on it.
Take your hat off for a second. We want to show you where the suspension penetrated the helmet. And the funny part is Parker said, you know, I figured that I maybe had gotten my bell rung so bad that I was going to come out of the hospital and say, you know, I want to thank all these people at Daytona International Speedway and the Daytona 500 because I just won a Winston Cup race. You really got your bell rattled, didn't you?
I really did. And I tell you, if it weren't for the prayers of my friends and family and fans, I don't think I'd be standing here.
Tell you what, it's good to see him, and it's good to hear that things are so far so good with Bobby Rahal.
Well, there is a story indeed, as Parker Johnson survives what obviously was a very, very nasty incident with the suspension coming up. As he said, great credit through to the authorities, to Reynard that build the cars, and to the helmet manufacturer as well. Very, very nasty incident, but great to see Johnston up and walking and able to talk in a way so lightly about it. There is Bobby Rahal's car being brought back. We see we've had 7 leaders already, 8 changes to the lead, 5 caution periods, and we've seen quite a few cars go out of the race already. 11 cars out of the race. The leader is Alex Zanardi, but he's just been into the pits, in fact, so that's out of date already, and he has dropped down to 5th in the order, with Patrick Carpentier is now our new race leader because he's not been into the pits yet.
Yeah, Zanardi and Mark Blundell both came into the pits under this caution. They'd only been in just a few laps ago under green, of course. Green flag pit stops only for half a dozen laps ago, but quite a lot of debris out on the track. And oh dear, there's Christian Fittipaldi. He'd just come out of the pits.
And he's lost a right rear wheel.
Lost a right rear wheel, indeed.
Now,
he has.
there must have been some sort of problem attaching that wheel, obviously. There it goes, still rolling. And corner workers going over to retrieve that wheel. Christian was running a couple of laps down in 9th position. But that is very much the end of Christian's race, end of the Swift effort here today after Michael Andretti was so impressive in the early stages. Christian Fittipaldi not quite as fast throughout the weekend, but he was running consistently. They had problems right at the early part of the race. He had to make early pit stops. He was okay, but now, of course, right out of it. So it's all happening. We're over half distance, as we mentioned. 131 laps are now completed as the cars tour past us on this yellow flag. Mark Blundell still driving a good race at the moment, staying out of trouble down there in 6th position, but very much on a par with the leaders. Raoul Boesel's car they pushed away.
I think everything was running fine. I was pacing myself. We made a few changes in the car during the stops, get better. It was a clean pit stop, everything. As soon as I put first gear, come out, something broke.
Tell us about the conditions of this long day on a very hot day while you were out there when things were going good.
Like I said, I was pacing. My Broma Sports car was running perfect. I was comfortable. Traffic wasn't too bad, so was looking for a good finish.
Well, unfortunately, it didn't happen. Thank you, Raul.
Jack? Gary, one of the great things, though, about being a teammate is no sooner did Raul's car fail than they dispatched someone.
Well, the disappointment there, obviously, for Raoul Boesel with the transmission failure, suffering again on the transmission, as we've seen with several people. Christian Fittipaldi just standing down by his car at the moment as the pace car still leading the field around. And Patrick Carpentier, our race leader at this point in the race. Fantastic to see him up there. He's got a couple of lapped cars between him and the pace car at the moment. Scott Pruitt running out behind him. There is Scott Pruitt. You're on board with the man in 2nd place who took pole position here, who's had some good results here in the past, won the race, as we mentioned earlier in the program, 1995, after a tremendous last lap battle with Al Unser Jr. That was Scott Pruitt's first ever win, actually, but he always seems to go well. He was up there with Andre Ribeiro in the race here last year as well. They were swapping the lead until Pruitt blew up on lap number 241. But Ford's engine's much more reliable, touch wood he says, so far this year than we saw last year. We saw a lot of engine failures from the Ford camp last year, but this year the Cosworth boys have done a great job with this engine. They've got the power and they've got the reliability to show for it as well, and Scott Pruitt still up there at the moment. That's another Ford engine man out of this race. Christian Fittipaldi having lost the wheel, but the engine was certainly running well. Let's just take a look. This is what happened to him, weaving around trying to get some tyre temperature up. He was. Everything seemed fairly normal. Oh, and then it suddenly wasn't very normal. The wheel came off. He saw it going bouncing over the top, and it just wasn't properly attached.
No, I think he could feel something going out of the pits, that all was not quite well there with the Kmart car, and there's a well-needed glass of water for Christian Fittipaldi. It's a very, very hot day, and around she goes. You can just see a flash of the wheel coming up over the top of the car there, as the car spins around on the access road there on the inside of the racetrack. But disappointment again for Christian Fittipaldi. He joins a long list of retirements this afternoon during the US 500.
So Carpentier leads, Pruitt is 2nd, and Paul Tracy is now in 3rd place. He's still going, the championship leader, looking better now. Shining, there's a bit of a breeze blowing, and the fans like that because it's pretty hot out there in this full capacity crowd here at the Michigan Speedway. It's changed its name actually. It used to be the Michigan International Speedway, but at the end of last year they dropped the International, didn't they?
Yeah, bringing it in line with the 2 other Penske Speedway's facilities, the California Speedway, brand new track in Fontana, California, which of course will see its first PPG Cup race, the season finale, September 28th, another 500-mile race down there. So it's a mirror image of this racetrack, just a little bit less banking, but 2 miles D-shaped oval. And of course Nazareth Speedway in Pennsylvania, the 3rd of Penske's racetracks, of course joined this week, of course, by the Homestead Motorsports Complex, or at least a share in that facility down in South Florida as well. So Penske Speedway is spreading their wings and just bringing the tracks into line with one another in terms of the names.
Well, Roger Penske putting a lot of money and effort into this facility over the years since he bought it in the early 70s, although it was built at the end of the 60s, 1967 it was put together. It's actually a 1,000-acre site that actually includes some road courses as well, but they don't get used very much, I don't think.
The road course is not used anymore, but I tell you what, it's a fantastic racetrack. But if you haven't had a chance to go out there this afternoon, if you go outside the back of turn 2 there, you can go off in the trees there around the back, and I tell you, it's a great racetrack. There's some wonderful corners there, and there's one part of the racetrack, it's like the old carousel at the Nürburgring, a sort of a paved, steeply banked inside part of the track, and then the outside is less banked and broader on the top side of the racetrack. It actually goes the other way. It's a right-handed corner as opposed to the Carousel Rodeo ring. So it's a fantastic road course there, but a little bit dangerous in this day and age. They used to race, of course, Formula 5000 cars and Can-Am cars around there in the 70s. Mario Andretti, of course, and Alan Senior and those guys used to race on that track. I don't think anybody in this